If you thought Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were buggy, it's about to get a whole lot buggier, because I'm going to attempt to beat a hardcore Nuzlocke where any Pokemon that faints has to be boxed forever, but I'll only be allowed to catch one of each bug type in the game. Will they have what it takes to make it to the final boss, or will my bugs be squashed along the way? Subscribe! Okay, I'm starting to think it's Misty running Game Freak because there's never ever been a bug type starter. On top of that, it's pretty much always been the worst type in the game, especially now that they buffed up ice types. So what's a simple bug catcher to do except catch some bugs? There's only one slight problem. The only two bugs I can get before Mesagoza suck. And so to even stand a chance against Nemona, my only choice is to grind to the level cap. And this was going to take absolutely forever because of the pitiful damage Tarantula was doing. Auto-battling to speed things up wasn't exactly an option either, because Tarantula kept running away like a little guess it's just you and me for the next couple hours.
One eternity later.
The single thing that bug types do better than any other type in Pokemon is evolving early. However, Spupa evolving at level 12 into Vivillon doesn't exactly help us against Palmy. So I had to continue my training with Charlotte the Tarantula to get her up to level 15. This not only gets her to the level cap, giving us the best possible chance to beat Nemona, but it's also the level where she evolves. We're not going to talk about what she evolves into. What's important here is it gives us an actual out to Nemona and lets us begin the game at all. A couple of assurances ensure we defeat Fuecoco, and a simple bug bite grants us the victory against Palmy. It only took us 2 hours to prepare for, but our bug types finally get to start the game. Now that I'm free to roam the world, I head just outside Cortando to pick up a female Combi. Kinda nice you can actually tell the gender in the overworld, because otherwise this would probably be the worst encounter of all time. The next piece of bug type slander is the first boss battle being the bug one. This should give you a rough idea of just how much confidence Game Freak has in their bugs. They didn't even take the time to give her any good ones, so she's stuck with Nimble and Tarantula, which both just get blown away by gusts. Her ace Teddiursa really isn't much better. While she's able to withstand a single gust, she doesn't have any great moves to hit me back with, and only gets 2 hits with Fury Swipes. A second gust puts an end to her pathetic display, and I go and pick up Brick Break for Charlotte to prepare for the next fight. Here we have to face the Titan Cloth, and in theory, this should be a difficult fight for our bugs. However, despite being the Rock Titan, in my 13 playthroughs of this game, I've never once seen it go for Rock Tomb, and this time around, it's no different, giving us a swift victory with Brick Break. Then before I take on Brassius at the level cap of 17, I can actually pick up a Scyther at level 16. What's dangerous about Brassius is his Sudowoodo has Rock Throw, which completely wrecks our bugs. Scyther is of course no different. Being quad weak to Rock, it's not really going to help us at all. Fighting Brassius with Scyther would be a terrible mistake since his Sudowoodo has Sturdy and we'd be guaranteed to be knocked out. However, in Lavincia, we can pick up a Metal Coat as early as the very start of the game, meaning we can instantly evolve Scyther into one of the strongest bug types of all time, Scizor. With its added steel typing, it's no longer weak to rock or flying, which in turn means the previously deadly Rock Throw from Sudowoodo now barely deals any damage at all. Scizor grants us a swift victory against Brassius, and not being weak to either flying or rock makes Scizor the perfect bug type to take on the Open Sky Titan. When planning out the run, this was a fight I was absolutely dreading, and even with Scizor's massive defense and not being weak to flying, we still take over half before getting to the second phase of the fight. I just have to hope it decides to attack Knackley or things might get ugly. But of course it immediately targets me with Pluck, taking me down to 7 HP, and Knackley, being as useful as ever, just boosts its speed with Rock Polish. It seems our insectoid superhero Rustman is living up to his name. I switch out to not lose my best Pokemon, but Bombardier actually targets Knackley this time. I go for Charlotte's signature move Silk Trap, which means if we get contacted, it'll lower Bombardier's speed. But not only does it target Knackley, Rock Throw isn't even a contact move. Finally, Knackley does something useful by dealing some decent damage with a super effective Smackdown before getting taken out. And unfortunately, one more X-Scissor isn't enough to take Bombardier out. But to my surprise, Charlotte actually survives a Pluck and takes Bombardier out with her held Rocky Helmet. She lives to see another day. Normally, in any run of Scarlet and Violet, facing off against Team Star's Shikomo is a difficulty spike of the game. Starmobiles are some of the most busted bosses in all of Pokemon, and personally, I don't think they're very well designed. Pretty much every strategy except raw damage is completely useless, and with these things' overinflated stats, they can be pretty tough to overcome. But with Stab's super effective bug moves, the Rustman made quick work of this hunk of junk. And so I set my sights on the third gym, first picking up a Nimble on the way. I see you rolling, and I'm not exactly hating, but excuse me, what? I guess you're coming with me. With all that new experience in the desert, Combi evolved into Vespiquen, and I tried my best to head back and pick up a Surskit, but these ones aren't actually wild, I guess. So I make my way to the moat surrounding Mesagoza, where they're plentiful. And this thing is the only Pokemon that can use water moves I can get, so it's a pretty valuable asset. I'm also able to evolve Nimble into Low Kicks at level 24, being our only dark type, which similarly is very valuable. I then realized my team was pretty insanely weak to electric, and I probably need to make some changes. And having exhausted close to every available encounter in the main game, I made my way to the DLC Teal Mask. Once there, I chased down a Sewaddle, which with its grass type can at least resist electric. Admittedly, the next one was pretty hard to find and fairly well camouflaged in the grass, but all that work to catch Charjabug was definitely worth it, especially since all we need is a Thunderstone to evolve it into Vikavolt. It took a little bit more effort with Swadloon to get it to like me, but once I'd made it to full friendship, I had my Leavanny. With a team assembled that's slightly better matched up against electric types, we still don't have a great matchup against her Mismagius, since nothing is super effective against it. To start though, I go for an Ice Beam, which instantly takes care of her Walk Roll. Second, she sends out Bellybolt, which we can't one-shot with Masquerain, so I'm forced to swap out. I send out Leavanny, who resists the incoming Spark beautifully. What's a lot less beautiful is Scytherina's pathetic damage output. The fact that we also activate Bellybolt's Electromorphosis, powering up its moves, ironically means that this is a matchup that we can't actually win, and we'd be taken out first unless we swap out. So I send in Charlotte, who unfortunately takes a ton of damage from a Spark. She's also somehow slower than Bellybolt before getting paralyzed, and definitely slower after. But with a bit of damage from Rocky Helmet and an X-Scissor at the end of the turn, we won't have to worry about Bellybolt anymore. Luxio comes in third, and after an Intimidate, we're not going to be dealing any meaningful damage, but I decide to stay in to just get a hit off, but I end up getting punished and paralyzed. At the very least, Charlotte doesn't faint in the process, and we do get some Rocky Helmet damage before swapping out into Nightmare. Low Kicks gets sparked on the switch, and with a Lunge, we almost take out Luxio the next turn, and the attack drop from Lunge makes no difference at all since the next Spark gets a crit, leaving Low Kicks at just 5 HP. Knowing Nightmare is faster and Luxio doesn't have any priority moves, I'm still safe to stay in here and take it out, which only leaves her ace Pokemon, Mismagius. I really can't let Nightmare go down since it'll be an integral part of beating Rhyme, so I swap out into my Assault Vest Vikavolt, which handles a Charge Beam nicely. Mismagius does get the special attack boost, which could definitely be an issue. To add insult to injury, it goes for Confuse Ray, but at least Jet breaks through the first turn and hits it with a Bug Bite. I figured with Mismagius's super low defense, I was better off hitting it on the physical side, but that didn't seem to be the case, and now I don't have anything great to switch to. I decide to stay in and go for a Hail Mary, as Mismagius hits me with a Hex, dealing massive damage even through my Assault Vest. What's worse is I'm still confused, but I do manage to break through and go for a Hyper Beam, which definitely does a lot less than I was hoping for. Because I'm forced to recharge, I have to take another Hex, which very fortunately Jet manages to survive. Because I don't know if a Bullet Punch can take out Mismagius at this range, I need a safe switch, and unfortunately, that means it's Charlotte's time to go. At this stage, there's a lot of bugs that can replace her, but it's sad to not get to use the Gen 9 exclusive. I then go for the Bullet Punch, and lo and behold, it's not enough to take Mismagius out. The +1 Hex then deals way over half damage, meaning that if I would have sent Scizor in right away, we would have lost Rustman. And while it sucks to lose Charlotte, losing our Scizor at this point in the game would probably have to be a reset. But defeating Iono isn't all sunshine and rainbows, since we immediately have to face Mela, the master of fire types. And this is where Masquerain comes in very handy. Because Torkoal has Drought instead of Clear Smog, we can actually lower its attack with Intimidate, and from there just set up a Rain Dance before it hits us with Flame Wheel. From there, all we need is a single Surf to take Torkoal out, but things won't be quite so easy against our Starmobile. First of all, we don't even outspeed, and it looks like we can tank at least one more Blazing Torque. However, a Rain-boosted Surf is not quite enough to deal half. The Starmobile is a lot faster, so we're in big trouble, except she goes for Screech. From the POV of the AI, it actually kind of makes sense since she can't one-shot us with another Blazing Torque. However, because she missed the Screech, we actually survive the next Blazing Torque and get to take her out. Meaning, if she would have just gone for 2 Blazing Torques in a row, we would have been in a lot more trouble. But the way things turned out, I'd say that fight went swimmingly. It was actually literally sunshine and rainbows, so guess I was wrong. And our bug-type rampage kept going. The next victim being Orthworm. With no good moves to hit Scizor, I was free to brick break my way to victory. Victim number 3, Kofu. He tried to put up a bit of resistance with Veluza, dealing some damage with Aqua Cutter before getting destroyed by Thunderbolt. Wugtrio even got Jet below half with a headbutt before being taken out as well. Only problem for Kofu is his final Pokemon is slower than Jet and has basically no special defense to speak of. With Atticus's poison types coming up, I take a lovely walk in the rain with Relor through Mesagoza, all to finally evolve it into Rabsca. But my secret weapon is right under Atticus's nose in the Tag Tree Thicket. It's my boy, Pineco. Once this thing evolves into Fortress, Atticus stands absolutely no chance. The guy is a team full of poison types, which, first of all, Fortress is completely immune to. Fortress is also much bulkier than Scizor, but what sets the two apart the most is that Fortress gets access to Earthquake. But before I let Fortress shake things up, I stall Skuntank out of Sucker Punches, which allows me to set up 3 layers of spikes. From there, Skuntank only has Venoshock and Toxic, which means it can't hurt Fortress at all and goes down to a couple of Earthquakes. And while it does take Fortress a long time to whittle down the Starmobile, between Leftovers recovery and having the super effective advantage, eventually the Starmobile goes down. Even Larry, who with his flying type Staraptor should be a threat, is also simply outmatched by our steel-clad bugs. Resisting normal, Scizor has no issue taking out his first 2 Mons, and Staraptor just can't outdamage the sheer bulk of Fortress. My unstoppable swarm was tearing through the game at record pace, and nothing can stand in the way of the unstoppable force that is my team. Were my exact thoughts moments before realizing I'm immediately forced to face Nemona, who now has a fully evolved Skeledirge, which my team is not very equipped to handle. We don't have much of a choice though, and I did at least do as much planning as was possible before going into the fight versus Larry. The real issue is, there's literally not a single bug encounter in the game that takes neutral damage from fire, and because my team may as well have a caution highly flammable label on it, we might be in a bit of trouble here. The first part of the fight goes to plan. I take out Lycanroc and then swap to Fortress to take out Palmo. Then to face Goomy, I swap out into Nightmare and simply take it out with a lunge. What sucks about this is that now that Skeledirge is coming out, Nightmare is pretty much screwed. Anything I switch into would literally get torched, which sadly means I have no option but to stay in. Nightmare goes for a pathetic resisted lunge, which barely does anything, and then proceeds to get burned at the stake for the greater good of the team. Now long term, this is terrible for the runs, as Nightmare is by far our best option against Rhyme, but the run won't even make it to Rhyme unless I can swap in Rabsca for free. Rabsca is definitely not faster than Skeledirge, but nor is she here to survive, and while her fate is sealed, she can survive the first Torch Song with a Focus Sash in order to execute a very important job. You see, my Masquerain is slower than Skeledirge, and with a Mud Shot, we not only get to use another Mud Shot after the speed drop, but it'll also let Masquerain outspeed Skeledirge once Rabsca falls. I hate to lose this cool new Pokemon so early in the run, but she's done by far the most important job of the run. The craziest part of all is that a rainstorm just randomly starts as I click Surf. Definitely something I could have used earlier in the fight, but for now, I'm just glad we made it through the battle, even though it cost us 2 team members. With Nemona defeated, what scared me the most is that we have a fight with her coming up very soon. But first we have to deal with Rhyme, something I thought would be a bit difficult since Nemona took out Low Kicks. But to my surprise, the combination of Jet and the Rust Man ended up being extremely effective. By using the first turn to take out Mimikyu and thus getting a boost from the crowd, the rest of the fight was pretty much completely free. And with Rhyme defeated, there's only one more boss fight before I'll be forced to face Nemona again. But sadly for Great Tusk, the best move it has to hit a bug flying type is Rapid Spin. That quad resisted Brick Break was a critical hit, barely dealing any damage at all. The plan was basically poisoning Great Tusk with Toxic and then roosting up any health I may have lost. However, because Great Tusk has knockoff, I didn't give Vespiquen any item, and so Acrobatics actually deals a huge amount of damage. There was just no way for Great Tusk to claw back into the fight, and with no better better encounters to capture, I once again had to face Nemona. But no new encounters also means I'm worse off heading into this fight than our previous one. There is technically one encounter in the game that takes neutral damage from fire, but Larvesta isn't gonna defeat Skeledirge. So my best option was to just send it, and the first part of the fight went exactly as before. I take out Lycanroc with Scizor, and for Pawmot, I swap out into Fortress to take it out with an Earthquake. Before we face Skeledirge, she sends in Sliggoo, so I swap in Vikavolt for one specific purpose. We once again have the speed issue against Skeledirge, and because I can't lower its speed with Mudshot since, well, Rabska is dead, I'm instead forced to go for Sticky Web with Jet and then swap out into Fortress and take Sliggoo out with a Heavy Slam. Definitely not the ideal matchup as she sends in Skeledirge, but the Sticky Web at least lowers its speed. Unless I want to lose Fortress, I have to swap out, and there's nothing else to it, I have to make a sacrifice. Scytherina's been pretty underwhelming in the run so far, so I don't feel too bad letting her go. Next, I send in Vespiquen, who is faster because of the Sticky Web, and I manage to get off a Toxic. At this point, anything I send in will get one shot by Torch Song, so I equip Vespiquen with a Focus Sash, and even though the item got consumed, the acrobatics damage that follows is pretty pathetic. It's too bad Vespiquen didn't have Power Gem yet, because I'm sure that would have done a lot more damage. With 2 Mons down, I send in the star of the show, Masquerain. Because of the Sticky Web, she is faster, but even a Mystic Water Surf doesn't even come close to taking Skeledirge out. At this point, I was really kicking myself for not giving Masquerain a Sash as well, since that would have definitely saved her. The one good thing is Poison is enough to take Skeledirge out at the end of the turn, but with 3 of our Mons down, we're very quickly running out of encounters. Luckily though, the next few are perfectly manageable with the ones we already have. Tulip being a Psychic-type gym leader was never going to be a problem in a Bug-type challenge. Scizor once again being the hero we need, but probably don't deserve. And Scizor's win streak continues since Grush's Ice types are no match, granting us the final gym badge we need. But before our swarm gets to face the Pokemon League, we've got Team Star to take care of, and we desperately need some new encounters. So I head back to Kitakami to pick up a Cutiefly, and all the way to Castle Royal Lake to pick up Heracross. However, at level 54, we're not actually going to be able to use it until the next level cap. So in order to fill out the team, I head back towards Cortando to pick up a Kricketot, because it's time to whoop some ass. With our Steel-type lineup, Ortega really doesn't pose a threat, especially since his Azumarill is somehow even slower than Vikavolt, who, despite looking like a fighter jet, is slow as dirt. From there, he's got a couple more fairy types, but we simply dismantle them with flash cannons. Although oddly, even though I took out Darkspun with a Volt Switch, I don't get to switch out as he sends in his Revavroom. Instead, I was forced to hard switch out into Scizor, who could easily tank Magical Torques and eventually take out the Starmobile with a Bullet Punch. From here, we still have to deal with the final Team Star member, Aerie, so I head back to Kitakami in order to pick up a Yanma. As for Aerie, this is an interesting matchup. Bugs aren't super effective against fighting types, but they do resist them. And by leading off with Rabombi, we can instantly pick up a KO versus Toxicroak with a quad-effective Psychic. She then sends in Annihilate, and this is specifically why I gave Rabombi a Focus Sash. Since one Dazzling Gleam won't take it out, the Sash will guarantee that I survive the Fire Punch, letting me take it out the next turn. Our next problem to deal with is Passimian, which does have Rock Tomb, scaring me out into Fortress. And in this case, the Rock Tomb actually helps me out by lowering my speed. Because once Passimians hit me with a close combat the next turn, lowering its own defense further, we can deal more damage with Gyro Ball because our speed is lower. As Fortress is taking on Passimian, I make sure to use Protect in between every round to get me as much leftovers recovery as possible, which allows me to survive a third close combat at 16 HP, which is just enough turns to defeat Passimian. Her final Pokemon before the Starmobile is Lucario, so I swap out a Fortress into Jet, who's holding an Assault Vest. Because the Lucario only has special attacks, our 50% boost to special defense with the Assault Vest is gonna let us out-damage this thing by a lot. In fact, by the time we take out Lucario, I'm confident we can take a hit from the Starmobile, so I decide to stay in with Vikavolt. We resist the incoming combat torque and could have even survived a critical hit, but this gives me the perfect opportunity to get some damage with Volt Switch and swap out at the end of the turn without Yanmega taking damage as it swaps in. And oh boy, Yanmega deals a lot more damage with Air Slash than I was ever expecting, allowing me a very comfortable victory against the final member of Team Star. This means we've wrapped up both the Victory Road and Team Star storyline, leaving only the final Titan. But with an Assault Vest Vikavolt, this fight is as free as it gets. And as a final preparation before taking on the Elite Four, I make sure to pick up a Larvesta. As a simple bug catcher, standing outside the Elite Four, I'm way beyond my pay grade. But I felt pretty good about the swarm I'd assembled with Mega Yanmega, the Yanmega, who will outspeed anyone after a single speed boost. Rustman, the Technician Scizor. Quattro 3, the Impenetrable Fortress. Hornboy the Heracross, which just doesn't quite sound right, does it? Jet the Vikavolt, who's proven time and time again to be an invaluable team member. And our newest team member, Sol the Volcarona, who could probably solo the rest of the game if any setup moves were allowed. And so the Elite Four gauntlet begins, and at this point, there's no going back. First, we face the ground-type trainer Rika, and nobody really has a clear advantage. Yanmega starts by taking out our Whiscash with one quad-effective Giga Drain. I then go for an Air Slash against Donphan, which ends up getting a flinch, allowing me to take it out the next turn with another Giga Drain. The reason I so carelessly stayed in against a sturdy Donphan with Stone Edge is because Yanmega's holding a Focus Sash, which I didn't even end up burning because of the Air Slash flinch. Heck, I don't even use it up before taking out Rika's next 3 Pokemon, after which I fall asleep to a yawn from Camerupt. Unfortunately, this does mean it's not a clean sweep from Mega Yanmega, and I have to swap out into Fortress. And once again, we face an opponent that simply can't outdamage Fortress's sheer bulk and leftovers recovery plus protect. And so, while it took about 3 minutes to execute, eventually Clodsire goes down. Next, we face Poppy, and for this, we've got an obvious answer in Volcarona. And Volcarona's Fiery Dance is literally like a worse Torch Song, the same base power of 80, except not 100% chance to boost our special attack, but with just the one boost from that first attack, we can pretty much melt through her entire team. The only exception to this is her Magnezone, which annoyingly always survives with Sturdy and then sets up a light screen to lower our damage output. But there's a very simple way to play around this. Because of Magnezone's light screen, we're not going to be able to one-shot Tinkaton with a Fiery Dance. However, by just equipping Volcarona with a Focus Sash, we can always survive the quad-effective Stone Edge. If Magnezone would have gone for anything else, we could have easily survived and just one-shot Tinkaton the next turn, meaning we'd never be at risk. So this fight was even more free than Rika. With the first 2 Elite Four members defeated, our rematch versus Larry is actually pretty scary. If we're not careful, flying types actually kind of destroy us, and he uses some pretty degenerate tactics. At least we can instantly make this a 6-on-4 by burning down his Tropius. Staraptor is second, and we definitely go down to a single Brave Bird, so I swap out into Fortress. Even here, Brave Bird is not resisted, and that damage is nothing to scoff at. So I once again employ defensive tactics, protecting and getting some leftovers recovery before taking the next hit. I then go for a Heavy Slam, and after all that recoil damage, it leaves Staraptor in the red. After another round of Protect, we're back up above half health and even manage to dodge the next Brave Bird, which lets us take out Staraptor with another Heavy Slam. Altaria is a big issue because this thing has Flamethrowers, so I swap into Mega Yanmega, who I've given the Assault Vest. With that special defense boost, we're able to survive 2 non-crit Flamethrowers, and I go for an Ancient Power, fishing for the Omni boost, but I end up getting a critical hit instead, taking Altaria down into the red, allowing me to take it out with a second Ancient Power, and once more, sadly, not getting the Omni boost. Next is Oricorio, which can be incredibly annoying with its Teeter Dance, so I swap out into Jet, who can easily tank a Revelation Dance, and while I hate the friendship mechanic that lets you dodge moves, in this case, I'm very happy I didn't get confused and managed to land a crit to take it out. As for his final Pokemon, Flamigo, there is nothing I can do to stop this Brave Bird. 2 of these things KO anything on my team, so I unfortunately have to sacrifice Vivillon. But I mean, Vivillon hasn't actually done anything since the very first boss fight of the game, so sacrificing it to guarantee victory with Choice Scarf Volcarona is a no-brainer. As for the final Elite Four member, this is where things could really go wrong if we don't play it right. Luckily, his Noivern doesn't have Flamethrower like Drasna's does in Gen 6, which would have been an absolute disaster for a swarm of bugs. Sadly, Powerpuff is not faster than Noivern, but I at least get some health back with Draining Kiss going second. Expecting it to go for another Air Slash to try and take me out, I swap out into Rustman, who takes a healthy 40% before knocking Noivern out with a Bullet Punch. Hassel then sends in Dragalge, but one single Hydro Pump isn't enough to take Scizor out. However, I managed to get the flinch, which just lets me KO Dragalge for free. This puts us in a very good spot facing Haxorus, since its best move to go for against us is Crunch. And because we can survive a critical hit, a simple Iron Head Bullet Punch combination is all it takes to take Haxorus out. Second to last is Flapple, and while this thing is super slow and I can easily take it out with a super effective X-Scissor, I decide to swap in Fortress here. The reason I do this is because once Scizor faces Baxcalibur, I really don't have a good play. And while it sucks to get Leech Seeded on the switch, Flapple only has resisted moves, so we can very freely set up 2 layers of Toxic Spikes, which then gives us an actual win condition against Baxcalibur as long as we can hold out long enough. I'm also able to swap into Powerpuff for free against a Dragon Rush, and then take out Flapple with a super effective Pollen Puff the next turn, only leaving Hassel with his Baxcalibur. As he swaps in, he of course gets poisoned by our Toxic Spikes, and expecting an Icicle Crash, I swap out into Soul to resist it with its Fire typing. It does do a good chunk of damage, but now that it'll most likely go for Glaive Rush, I can swap out and safely switch in Powerpuff to dodge it with its Fairy type. And every switch we manage to safely pull off as a ticking clock for Baxcalibur due to the poison. Now expecting another Icicle Crash, I swap out into Fortress, who can easily tank it being a resisted hit. I can then just go for Protect, further subjecting Baxcalibur to yet another turn of poison, now getting it below half health. And from here, there's really no reason to swap out since I know I can tank any hit with Fortress, so I just deal some extra chip damage with Heavy Slam before poison takes care of Baxcalibur at the end of the turn. And so my bugs had done it. They'd made it all the way to the champion. They even almost made it deathless through the Elite Four, only losing Vivillon. And as long as I can make it past Gita, my bugs will have their final showdown against Nemona. And so, with the stakes as high as ever, I went into the champion fight with a plan. The fact of the matter is, Gita has one of the worst champion teams in all of Pokemon, and I was about to fully take advantage of that by first taking out Espathra with a single Bug Buzz, sending in King Gambit. With a U-turn, I swap out by also dealing a bit of chip damage, which, to be honest, is not necessary at all, since after tanking a Stone Edge, which isn't super effective because of Rustman's Steel type, I can easily take King Gambit out with a quad effective Brick Break. Avalugg comes in third, but Rustman, being the absolute hero he was born to be, manages to get another Iron Head flinch when it matters most, meaning a second one is all I need for Avalugg to go bye-bye. Fourth is Veluza, which you'd think be faster than Scizor, but nope, it just goes down to an X-Scissor before it even gets to move. And things don't get better for Gita from here, since her next Pokemon is Go-Goat, which also immediately gets destroyed by an X-Scissor. Finally, she's got Glamora, but at such high health, I decide to just stay in and easily tank an Earth Power, and while an Iron Head just barely falls short of the KO, a simple Bullet Punch the next turn, and we've beat the champion. And while that champion fight went about as smooth as it possibly can go, we all know that's not the real test. What's gonna decide if this run goes the distance is our fight versus Nemona. But before we fight her, there are a few other important story beats to take care of, and some of these trainers actually have some pretty dangerous fire types on their team. But luckily, I came fully prepared. As for Arven, the strategy starts with setting up 2 layers of Toxic Spikes against his Greedent that basically can't do anything. Then once we take it out with Heracross, Scovillain comes out and we swap out into Assault Vest Soul. This way, we can comfortably take a non-crit Fire Blast and retaliate with a Fiery Dance the next turn, which unfortunately just falls short of the KO. However, with the Assault Vest, we're able to survive the second one, and the poison does the rest of the work to take out Scovillain. The only other problem Pokemon for our bugs on Arven's team is Garganacl, but we can easily handle it by just swapping in Fortress. Its Stab Stone Edge barely touches us, and we have the super effective Earthquake to outdamage it. From there, it's a piece of cake to take care of the rest of his team and grant us the victory. Director Clavel is a little bit more tricky of an opponent. His team is very strong, and in most challenges, he's probably a more formidable opponent than Champion Gita is. First, we use Soul to take out his Oranguru with a Bug Buzz, baiting in Gyarados. With a held Focus Sash just in case we miss, I go for Will-O-Wisp to lower its attack with a Burn. This substantial damage decrease means it doesn't even take us down to our Sash with a Stone Edge. Now that the Gyarados isn't a threat at all, I can swap out into Fortress, who can easily stall it out with the Burn using Protect and alternating with Toxic Spikes every other turn. Finally, when Gyarados is just about to go down, I swap out into Heracross. This is crucial in our strategy to deal with his fire-type Houndoom. It's his only Pokemon super effective against Heracross, so he's always gonna send it out next. And with a held Choice Scarf, Heracross isn't even gonna let Houndoom use a single move before we take it out with a super effective close combat. From here, the rest of the battle is a piece of cake since he doesn't have any Pokemon that threaten our bugs. Which leads us to the final person standing in our way of battling Nemona. But Penny is actually the easiest trainer to prepare for since we really only have to defeat Umbreon before we face Flareon. And because we took out Umbreon with Mega Yanmega at full health, we're actually taking zero risk against Flareon with a Focus Sash. However, Mega Yanmega decides to pull a Rustman and simply flinches the Flareon, which overall grants us an incredibly easy victory, meaning the time has come for our dreaded final showdown with Nemona. Having been a formidable rival, Nemona has definitely been our biggest obstacle throughout this run, and if our bugs can manage to beat her, there's only one fight left in the game. So I start by instantly taking out her Lycanroc with a Bullet Punch from Rustman, sending in Pawmot. I'm expecting her to go for close combat since that would do the most damage, but swapping out into Soul to resist it is perfect since that lowers her defense and special defense. Then with a Choice Scarf, I can outspeed, and at -1 special defense, a single Psychic is enough to take it out. Facing Goodra third, I really don't want to be locked into a non-stab special attack like Psychic, so I swap out into my Assault Vest Heracross and hit it with a Mega Horn. It's not quite enough, so I have to take a second Dragon Pulse, which isn't even enough to take me below half, and a Throat Chop takes Goodra out. Dunsparce comes out fourth, but a simple stab close combat is all we need to take it out, leaving her with Orthworm. Because of Orthworm's insane physical defense, I'm not sure I can take it out with one close combat, and I don't really want to risk taking a hit. So I swap out into Soul, who can easily get the KO with a Fiery Dance the following turn. The only problem with this is we're now locked into Fiery Dance as Nemona sends in her final Pokemon, Skeledirge. I've got to switch out here because at 83 HP, Soul is not surviving the incoming Torch Song. As per usual, none of my options are good, so I swap in Mega Yanmega, who once again is only able to survive the lethal Torch Song because of a held Focus Sash. From there, I have to just go for broke, sending an Air Slash which doesn't get the flinch, which unfortunately spells the end for Mega Yanmega. I send in Fortress next because I need to take out Nemona in the most humiliating way possible. With the Sturdy ability, I'm able to withstand one Torch Song without a Focus Sash, but I don't need HP for this plan. Yeah, instead of that being the epic deciding moment I wanted it to be, you've just witnessed me look like an absolute buffoon on the internet. Scizor can come in and clean up the remainder of Skeledirge's health, but in the end, was it really me, or was it Nemona once again getting the last laugh? But we can't think about things like that right now. We've got a world to save, and for some reason, that falls to me. I'm just a guy who's a bug catcher. I didn't ask for all this AI and these insults, but if I'm the only guy for the job, then I guess it's time we do this, Sada. Somehow, my swarm of insects have made it all the way to the end of the game, and as long as I can beat AI Sada's lineup of Paradox Pokemon, I'm free to go back to Viridian Forest in peace. Sada starts out the fight with a bug type of her own, which doesn't quite go down to one Dazzling Gleam. However, it doesn't have any super effective moves to hit Power Puff, so we just take it out the following turn. From here, we've got some big problems to deal with, not least Fluttermane. With both Mystical Fire and Power Gem coming off a special attack stat that almost rivals Mewtwo, yeah, we could be screwed. After letting Power Puff go down, I made sure to give Heracross the Assault Vest to be able to survive a Mystical Fire. I then go for an Earthquake, which ends up getting a critical hit, taking Fluttermane out in one hit. We would of course have survived another Mystical Fire, so the critical hit doesn't help us too much. Once she sends in Screamtail, I swap out into the Rustman, and a Play Rough coming off of Screamtail's pathetic attack barely does anything. And after a couple of Iron Heads and a Bullet Punch for good measure, we take out Screamtail easily. Fourth out is Brute Bonnet, but this thing is quad weak to bug and slow as dirt, so it pretty much instantly gets removed by an X-Scissor. With 4 of her 6 Pokemon defeated, Sada sends in Sandy Shocks, so I swap out of the Rustman, this time sending in Vikavolt. Sandy Shocks predict predictably goes for Earth Power, which we can dodge with Levitate. It then hits us with a super effective Power Gem, dealing a massive amount of damage. I fight back with a Bug Buzz, dealing just above half, and after Leftovers recovery, it's unclear whether or not I can take another hit. I stay in and risk it, surviving with just 3 HP, allowing me to fire off another Bug Buzz and take out the stupid Magneton abomination. Finally, Sada is left with her most fearsome creature, the Roaring Moon. With a held booster energy, it instantly activates its photosynthesis ability to boost its attack. From there, it goes for the lethal blow with a Dragon Claw. Now, I was just expecting Jet to go down here and not survive due to friendship features, so I just kinda clicked anything, and it happened to be Volt Switch. As a Nuzlocker, I hate the friendship mechanic that saves you, so it kinda worked out perfectly. From there, Kricketune survives a Stone Edge with a Focus Sash and fires off a Stab X Scissor, which falls just shy of getting the KO. Not today, buddy. But leaving it at such little health, Kricketune has set up the Rustman to steal the win. And so, with that final bullet punch, I managed to beat a Pokemon Scarlet Hardcore Nuzlocke using only bug types. And what did my experience with these incredible bug types teach me? Steel types are awesome. I should do a run with those. Subscribe!